recording for YouTube. Everyone say hi to YouTube.
Yes. Hello. In an appropriate way, right?
Right.
Say hi
yes.
to YouTube in an appropriate way.
Careful. don't get carried away.
Answer a plus.
Yes.
Pants are, or at least from the waist up camera shot. That's the requirement. Pants or.
Yeah. I don't know where Fu is. Fu should be here. I thought he said he'd make it. He was here earlier, so maybe he will grace us with his presence later. We'll see.
Yeah, I think he said he needed to be away for like 20 minutes. He might just be a little bit long.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. No worries. All right, welcome everyone. Well, we have some new faces here, so welcome all the new people. It's always good to have more people from the community around. It's great. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to go over was the updates on the listing site. So everyone is kind of aware. I know I want to get that out as soon as possible, and you guys are kind of like the stakeholders for that project. So I want to update you on what's been going on. It's mostly complete. I just basically need to add a login form and some sort of authentication, spruce up a couple like the admin interfaces, and then we could probably host it and launch it live. So we're getting pretty close on that. That'll be great. I want the emphasis to be on tags and more like ambiguous tags, so like player economies, have that as a tag, and a searchable field on the site. And then the clickable tag cloud, I think, will be a really cool addition too. So that's the update for that. And then I guess we could go straight into the game jam. The highly anticipated game jam.
That's right. The people clamor.
Right. So the game jam, the original idea for the game jam was that we would use the results of the January state of PBBG on the most liked mechanics, and you only get to choose from those most liked mechanics in order to make your game from. You can choose as many as you want, or just one, or anything like that. And then, so that's pretty much as far as the planning has gone on that. So, sure. Do you guys have any suggestions or other ideas?
Pull that up, or send a link.
Yes, let me screen share.
Well, you want actual information so you can make decisions? This is going to turn into total madness if that happens.
Madness. Let's see if that works. Okay, so I did go live. There we go. All right, should look good for the stream. So here we have the single player features. So idle, immersive design. Oh, I think it's the features. Where was it? Yeah, the multiplayer features. Economies, clans, clan world boss, chat, clan housing, and PvP. So use those for multiplayer features, and then single player features was resource gathering, crafting, quests, player combat, housing, guest login, and audio. So I can also send out a link to this, but you can see it if you just go to stateof.pbbg.com. It'll show up there. So there you go.
So what's the idea where we would be voting on what of the most popular features are part of the game jam?
So I think that the teams can choose the features that they want to have, but they're limited to what was in the survey, what people mentioned in the survey.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
It's kind of a smattering of everything. Let's be honest. Like, it's a pretty wide range, and maybe we could do like just have them choose one feature. Let me just make this bigger so it's probably easier for you guys to see. But so you could do like. The
first thing that comes to mind, is given the small size of the community, it would be possible that everyone chooses a different feature so that no one's competing against each other on the same idea.
I like that.
I mean, in terms of that being a negative thing, though. So, if you wanted to compare how well people did against each other with their whatever they produce, if everyone chose different features, it would be hard to compare.
I would instead just say we go from the top as for the results, and then that would be the order of game jams we did. So, like for the multiplayer features, we'd be doing economies. The first one, second would be clans. Third one would be like world bosses.
So we're gonna do every year. We're gonna have another survey, and maybe we just take the top mechanic every year, the top most voted mechanic, and make that for the game jam. It's like economies is most wanted.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's good. That would be pretty interesting to make an entire game with just an economy.
Yeah, just the economy is interesting, huh?
Yeah, which I guess is
you'd have to generate the money somehow. So, like, what would the gameplay be
Maybe
there?
something stock-like, supply and demand, prices increase, people want stuff.
or maybe just the main mechanic has to be an economy. You can have other stuff, but it can't be the main. Yeah, that's a good idea.
You could break the fourth wall and have the automated idle generators just be cross traders.
That's funny. That's great.
Gotta have a theme, you know.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. So teams, what about teams? Teams of like 2, teams of 5.
How complete of a game are we talking about here? Because a PBBG needs a frame if you're going to get it done over a weekend with 2 people.
MVP, playable, basically. They're going to be voted on, so, however much you can get complete. I would maybe not even a login system, just give everyone a random account ID when they log in or something,
Yeah. But why would you define teams, right? Because if someone wanted to do it solo, maybe they could do it solo, or if a couple people work together a lot together, they could work together. I mean, do you really want to designate a team requirement, or just let people grab a theme and do it?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be much of a competition that, like, I feel it's unfair if I went solo. I don't think we're going to probably feel like that.
Okay. Well, the benefit of teams, you can have a team of 1, but we get team names, right? Which could be
why didn't you mention that up front?
The other benefit of teams is that you've got people in the community with different skill sets. So someone that isn't so crash hot at coding might be able to contribute in another way. So
well,
if everyone was going solo and you weren't a coder, then you'd feel a little bit left out.
Yeah, well, but that's what I'm saying. If someone wanted to, like, I can't code well enough to make an MVP in a weekend coding, but I just don't think we need to designate, like, you need a 2-person team or a 3-person team. Let maybe have an event or start a discussion in the on the server of, here comes the jam. Maybe set up a channel that, like, if you're looking for a team or looking to put together a team, someone can say, hey, I'm a coder and I'm looking for game design, or looking for whatever, and then kind of figure it out.
That's a good idea. So you're saying it'll be team based, but the composition of the team could be 1 or it could be more.
Yeah, so whatever works.
It might be better to set a maximum of people rather than a minimum.
That's a good idea.
So, like, five people over the course of like a week's game jam is probably going to. It really depends on whether or not that's like summer break for a college student, or whether or not it's like a person with kids that only gets like an hour and a half a day. So, having a max of 4 or 5 people would probably be fine, and you'd find a range of people.
Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, so we'll do like a max of 3 people, 4 people, 3 people. I think we don't want to add too many, because then, like, a max of 5 people. 5 people making a game is obviously going to probably be voted higher than the single solo dev. So make it somewhat fair.
Right, but let me ask the question here of, what is the intent of the game jam? So what at the end of the day are we trying to accomplish with the game jam?
Innovate mechanics and
right, but what I'm saying is, I mean, I see it already an emphasis on, like, who's going to win this thing, right? Like, we're going to vote for a winner, and in my mind, that's fine. And of course, I suspect most of us are competitive in some way or another. But I'd rather the intent of the game jam be to work on a cool project, maybe work with some different people and make something cool. Not like, do we win this thing because we had 5 people and we beat the sole dev, So I think an emphasis on like we're going to get together as a community and we're going to make some teams and we're going to build something cool. And who knows, maybe a partnership comes out of that to make a real game or whatever. But
that's a good idea. Okay,
I agree. That's
fair.
I think that is more interesting. I think some people probably struggle forming teams just as a hobby project to start with. So if that becomes sort of a requirement, it might benefit, I think, the community in the long run to be forced to work with at least one other person.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the same side of that, I could see myself in the dodgeball lineup of the two captains picking people. I'd probably be towards the last because I'm not a coder myself, and I just do writing and scenario design. So I think if it was more encouraged that you just try to find people in the community that can be part of a project, and that's kind of the point of the game jam, rather than saying find the best people to get the winning game.
Right, and that's why I don't care about and that's why I don't care about the winning. Personally, I don't care about the winning game, but and that's where I think if we kind of divide it up into teams, because I think your point is great, Devin, of like, hey, I'm a writer. Who wants a writer? And maybe that's whether it's Delta or Pi or whatever, who's going to be shotgunning this whole thing of kind of encouraging, hey, like you got a couple coders over here and a game designer. Why don't you add, Randy as a world builder or Devin as a writer or whatever. Let's if someone wants to get on a team, I suspect we can get them on a team. And that's why I don't even know if we need an upper limit, right? Because I don't care if there's 6 people working on a project if they're all adding something. Right. Yeah. The trick is that we, in my mind, and this is my opinion, that what's the intent? And if the intent is that we learn and grow and build something as a community, if there was 10 people going to participate and they all said let's make a mega game with 10 people, then let's make a mega game with 10 people. Who cares?
Yep. The major complaint I get from the game jams I've been a part of, sorry about that, but the major complaint that I get directed towards me is that being a writer and scenario designer, oftentimes I'm the person that's increasing scope, not maintaining it as MVP. So I understand that fully. Not because I'm trying to make it a more grand thing, but typically you need to round all the edges. And in a game jam, you have very jagged edges. So that's what I hear constantly.
Well, I mean, it's a skill to be in a game jam, right? To do that kind of thing. So it's something we all got to develop. But I like that idea of encouraging people to work together.
Right. And think about it, Devin, because that's a chance for you as a writer, as a perfect example. That's a chance for you to educate some other people who aren't writers on how to integrate a writer into the team, right? Like how to work together, how to get the best out of the writer, because they want the best out of you and you want the best out of the team as far as what they're asking of you and taking your feedback and input. So, I think what a great learning opportunity to kind of sit there and see what other people do for their main jam, as it were, and learn from that.
And I might just add, look, for myself, I have never released anything out into the public. So for me, simply just having something at the end of the weekend or the week that's out there with other people playing, that would be a huge win for me, regardless of what it was or how broken it was. The fact that something eventually got out there would be like absolutely awesome. And I was just going to also say, we're talking about teams and picking teams and what the size of the teams would be. The other question would be, do we make it a lottery? Like, is it up to individuals to form, teams, or are we going to just put our names into a hat and have it randomly drawn?
That's an interesting idea.
It's interesting, and I think it's neat to explore. My concern with that would be you'd have to almost divide into categories, right? Like, because you don't want 3 coders on a team and 3 writers on a team, although both could come up with really cool things, by the way. But a little more combined arms approach might be better.
Yeah, if you were to integrate that into like this is what's necessary to make a game. Like you need a coder, whether it's like front end, back end. We have all the tags in the Discord, so that might be all the people that participate. And then you just grab from those and assemble teams at random, depending on fulfilling all of those things. So that might work. Obviously, I'd be one of the miscellaneous slot people at the bottom, which would be perfectly fine. But as long as you actually have coder, front end, back end, maybe someone that does a little bit more design, mechanics, all that kind of stuff, fill it up.
Yeah. So, okay, are we thinking like 2 to 4 people for teams? Like it has to be at least 2 people. But like should we set an upper limit to it? Because so the other thing in here, and welcome, Fu. Welcome. We're talking about the game jam. You're on mute. Yeah. So the other thing that we need to consider is that I intended to do a cash prize for the winner. And we have I think a community PayPal set up for the first time that we tried to do this way back when. And I think that was with Ian, and it kind of fluttered out, but we saw the PayPal account. So, we can donate to it and put in, and I think that we'll probably do like a small entry fee in order to get in there, like very small. That way the winner can get a good prize. And then so there is something at the end of this, not just a cool game, but maybe a little bit of funding for servers, right? Or funding for more development or something like that. I don't think it's going to be an outrageous number unless people go crazy with donations, but I don't know, maybe a couple $100, something like that.
The level of interest we have in this as far as developers, like Travis said, 15 people are interested in making games, and then 30 other people are interested in playing them, and perhaps maybe donating.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, so the judges.
No, I'm asking how much support we have.
Oh, okay.
Like what's the pool? Yeah.
I'm not sure yet. I don't know. I figure we'll probably have at least probably 4 teams, I would say, would be able to do it. I don't think there's going to be a massive number of people, especially because this is the first one and our community is still a little disjointed. So this is in an effort to help bring people back together, and also make some cool games. So I want to get I think there's a good way to get players and developers to be reconnected again. So I want the players to be the judges, and then the developers obviously make the games. So we have a huge lack of player representation in the community right now, and they're kind of just all in the game discords, and then that's it. So overall goal, that's trying to get players more involved.
And maybe it makes sense to put out a call of how many people want to participate, right? Like this is going to be the game jam date. How many people want to participate? And then once we see, because people always say yeah, and then it's like, okay, it's time. Here's the date, and then it's like, can't do it, won't do it. So that way, if we had an idea, then it would help us kind of structure it. I don't like the random idea, by the way, because you just may end up with people with completely different game ideas. Everyone's coming in from zero, and I'm certainly willing to accept that if that's what people want. So I think it would be kind of cool for maybe people to kind of pitch a game a little bit, right? So you have someone with an idea, so a few people pitch games, and then people could join those teams. I mean, that might be, so I come out and say, hey, we're doing economy, so I want to build this, space economy where it's almost like a system builder, and you're trying to balance, you're colonizing a system, and you're trying to balance the economics and keep the colony viable, and someone says, I'd like that idea, I want to work with you, so, so Devin says, hey, I'd like to write some story for that, and so if we have a few people making pitches, and then I think the thing from a community perspective is if someone wants to join your team, they join. You don't say no, I don't really want you to join my team. We join the teams we want to join and work together. But that way you can kind of work on a project that sounds exciting to you. And I bet there's plenty of ideas here.
I really like a pitch session. I actually had in I think it was high school. I took this it was like a business entrepreneur class. I don't know. It was a really, really weird, experimental class. But we made a business, and part of the business, the whole class was part of it. But part of that was a whole bunch of the students got together and they created pitches, and then they pitched it to the class, and everyone voted on which one they wanted to do. And I think that was such a great experience, in my opinion, because you got it. It was a whole lot of different dimensions with it. But a pitch session would be really cool, where we have a couple of people get up, give pitches to everyone who wants to join, and then they just when they're done, they choose what team they want to be on. I think that'd be really cool. Yeah. And if your project doesn't have any people who want to join it, then you would probably want to join someone else's team, right?
Or you could go solo, right? So at that point, you can say, I'm going to do this solo because I think it's cool. And in fact, you may get a situation, because I can see this. So say I make a pitch, and no one joins my team, but then maybe I could go to, like maybe, and I'll just use Devon to pick on you, like maybe I can go to him, he's on a team writing, but say, hey, I can use a little bit of writing if you've got some spare time. And if he doesn't, then that's fine. But if he does, then like maybe he can kind of contribute to that as well. So I don't think that necessarily closes any doors. But I think what we'll find is if we do a pitch session, is not everyone will pitch an idea, right? So we'll have a few people pitch ideas, and that'll give us, and I think we'll get a decent natural team number out of that, of people joining teams.
Yeah.
I'm with
I
you.
found what works for me when I've been on teams is either when we're in that first session, because typically first sessions of game jams is like, what is the idea? I'll either ask other people like, hey, is there any broad generalization of high concept things that you want to try out? Because I can work within those, but generally I kind of want to find like my stream of consciousness throughout the game for the design, so that I'm not making something and everyone else designs like their own stuff. I don't want to say that I'm like the leader of that team, but I have to make sure that I know what everyone's doing. So either I'm the one that comes up with a concept and other people like build off of that, and I'm like, cool, I can work with that, or someone else comes up with a concept and I just have to develop like what the stream of that is for like the intro. So if I do pitch, I'm not going to be the leader of that team, like, because I'm not going to be able to say I can do it from start to finish. It's just not within my skill set.
Yeah, but you could pitch the idea and say, like, so Deborah, you could pitch the idea and say, I've got an idea. Here's the idea, right? I'm pitching it. What I need is a coder, and maybe mechanic help or whatever. And then that way, someone who's a coder says, like, oh, I love that concept. And then, they're in there building the code based on your story,
I'm good.
That's the beauty, because anyone can pitch at that point, right? You can pitch if you're just an artist. You can pitch if you're just a musician. I mean, anyone can make the pitch with the concept being, let's say you as a writer pitch and no coders want to join the project. Well, then maybe you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to shelve this idea for now, and I'll go join a team as a writer.
Yeah. See what I can align with the best and just see who I can apply with.
Yeah.
Another major point that I think would be interesting is the $100 sounds like a decent enough gift, but or prize. But another thing that could be interesting is the winner of this could actually be supported by the community for a little bit, so their game will actually get to run after it's created. Or the alternative of that is, if you make the game, but it's not something you're interested in running for a long time, you can leave the source code open for someone that is valid for actually running it and then continuing that for its life.
Yeah, there's some obvious promo opportunity too. We could put it on the homepage or something.
Yeah.
And I think that's better than a cash prize, I think. I mean, a cash prize is cool if people want it, but I think some support from the community is a material thing that really has a benefit far beyond a short-term cash infusion of some sort.
Yeah. Just having a PBBG official like hosting droplet or something like that people can have, and then you migrate it onto your own stuff once you take it over.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So promotions on the website and like whatever other official channels, right?
Community support, right? Because one of the things that would even be cool, if you think about it, is like, let's say I made something, we all know my coding skills, right? So if they said, hey, Randy, we really thought your game was cool, and maybe just get a little, like, some support from the coding guys saying, hey, like, let's work on this together, go in and refactor this part, here's what you should look at, here's some links to look at. I mean, that would be really cool. It's almost like having a mentor come in and say, or just someone with different ideas of like, hey, here's how we can polish this up, and here's how we can do this a little different or a little better or a little faster. So that to me would be super valuable.
Okay. Cool. The community support might be a little bit spotty because that's kind of on a volunteer basis, but yeah, we can try to rally around that and kind of make that as kind of a core part. And the cash prize,
we got enough, because it doesn't take 20 people to do community support, right? I mean, honestly, one person really with some great ideas can change a whole concept or a game, or really help someone out. So, and I think we'd have more than that. We have some really good core members who are super knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
So I had another hilarious idea for a future one that we could do. There are obviously a lot of games that die off because the developers just abandon them. That's very prevalent because either the community
Sorry.
Either because like the mechanics aren't balanced on day one, perhaps the content's just not that entertaining, but it could use a lot of polish before they actually did anything. We asked for permission from those abandoned games. Hey, can we take your source code? And that is actually the format that we give everyone. And then that is actually like make the best game out of this.
Have you guys heard of Shinterland?
Yeah.
No.
We were talking about that about a month ago or 2 months ago or something. It sounds like it would fit that description exactly. It's still up, but the developers he's not able to commit to it anymore. He pretty much just keeps it online and that's it. And it is an open source game. That could be an example. It's like restoring a game that has, existence already. And like you're saying, that being like the format, lets everyone do their own, game jam on this concept or something.
That would be super cool.
And it would take a lot less of the framework development at the beginning. And so you could actually put that up for, you could put that up for a week instead of a full month game jam and see what comes of it.
Okay, great. All right, so let me write that down. So far we have, just as a recap, all right, so we're going to use a top most voted single player and multiplayer mechanic, and it has to be the core mechanics, right? So single player for this one is going to be resource gathering, and then for multiplayer it's going to be economies. It has to be the core. And then we're going to do a team pitch session for volunteers, then everyone kind of chooses their team and goes on from there. And we're going to have a cash prize and promotions on the website and official channels and the community support. Do I need to include anything else?
Don't forget to mention the cash prize is $1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million.
In game, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, well, of course. Yeah.
Microtransactions.
That's the asterisk. That's the small print underneath. In-game currency only, cannot be cross-traded.
Yep. In my home-rolled cryptocurrency. So
That's right.
1 million Delta coins.
Delta coins, I like it.
Actually, I had an idea, and I think it would still be a really good idea and very lucrative for anyone who was able to pull it off, but creating like a PBBG crypto where you handled all the microtransactions basically as a platform, like doing your own payment gateway for all the PBBGs. And then you take a small cut off the top whenever any transaction happens between anything. And then when players buy into that crypto, they can use it on a whole wide range of games that are into that currency.
Be interesting. Going to formalize what's happening anyway.
Yeah, right. So, but anyway,
Persistia coin.
What? Persistia?
Persistia coin.
I love that. That's awesome. I'm going to write that down. It's great.
Yeah, I do have to warn you guys that it's quite hard to make a good cryptocurrency that's not exploitable.
Yeah.
I tried and failed.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
It's hard to make a good game that isn't exploitable, so deal with it.
Yeah, true.
Good point.
Like I was already thinking about making a cryptocurrency or blockchain-based game for the game jam. Anyway,
there was a guy who was doing that. Well, no, he was making a cross-tradable platform based off of blockchain, where you could like trade in-game items from one game to another game, and it was like some kind of like valuation. I think he stopped coming around.
Yeah, it was hot and heavy for a little while.
Yeah, that was an interesting encounter.
So that'd be kind of a stupid but funny idea. Instead of having microtransactions with actual advertisements from real businesses, you would just have random ads for other PBBGs, and you'd get their premium currency for doing it.
Oh,
that's interesting. Yeah.
you have another thing you could do. You could make like a communal API, like a trading platform, so that you can implement in different games. So you can just trade like wood from one game for food from another game.
That sounds awesome.
It seems officializing the cross trading, and I know that a lot of developers really do not like cross trading.
Yeah, well, you lose control of your economics.
I mean, it's happening.
Yeah. that was what this conversation started when that guy came onto the server, right? Of like, how do you manage your economics if suddenly you're flooded with wood that you had balanced the wood production and supply and demand, and now all of a sudden it's coming from other places.
Yeah, and he didn't know about cross trading, and there was a lot of like miscommunication. That was just a very, very interesting encounter.
Yeah.
Yes.
You could do it like between multiple games where you have like the gatherers, just the idle clickers who produce basic materials, and they sell it to people who make more advanced materials out of it, and then you have another game that builds buildings out of it or whatever. Then it's more of a one-way line of selling stuff.
Is that like?
Yeah,
This is
I think
like
with the right structure,
SimCity.
it has some good, interesting potential.
It's like
Yeah, that was like SimCity 2010, wasn't it? Where you all have different towns, and the town you're in has certain natural resources that are different from every other location, but you populate next to other people that have their own towns that are playing the actual game next to you, and you have official trade agreements between them. So that was neat, but the game didn't actually go that well because it had that login error because it had limited number of people that could stay logged in.
oh
No.
well, that sucks.
And the always online stuff.
Yeah. Only online.
It sounds really interesting. It's like microservices, but for video games. That's a really interesting concept, actually. Huh.
If I've had like a concept lying around for like 5 years already, where it's like a async or how do you call it? Not like the games where you have like 3 hunters and 1 alien. That's also called asynchronous or whatever.
Oh yeah, asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Where you have like adventurers who like do the idle part and gather resources, and they donate it or they sell it to towns, and the mayor is like someone who plays like in the same economic system, but like a completely different game. It's more of a maybe real-time strategy or whatever.
Yeah, all that meta stuff sounds.
So it's a game of games, like a meta game of games.
Yeah.
You can have games all the way down, right? Like how far do these games go?
Yeah.
Depends on how much time that I have to work on it.
That was the problem. You have to maintain 2 games and always have to be if you screw up one, you mess up the other one as well.
Yeah, and you'd have to balance the players, right? Because you'd want a certain number of players at each level. Because if you have 100 doing one game and 1 to 1 doing the other, that probably doesn't balance out.
I think supply and demand would equal it out.
Supply
if it's very profitable to become an adventurer, then people will become adventurers.
Yeah.
One solution to that type of game would be to develop a parallel metric system to them, so that to know where you're standing, it's like a bar out of 100 towards like how efficient it is, and you're just doing your gameplay to succeed in doing that. Instead of saying the only way for you to do it is for the previous player in the tier below you to successfully do theirs, or otherwise you don't succeed. And so the overall relations between the games don't depend on each other so much, but rather the individual experience would, I guess. It's difficult because you also have to balance in, like, do you have an NPC faction that's just doing the rest of the work if none of the player base is playing the bottom tier?
Yeah, building AI into those dependent mechanics, you have to, because if you launch and no one plays, it ruins everything.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
There is no proof of concept if no one proves the concept.
But what you described, then you could do it not direct trading between 2 games, but like one game, if adventurers kill a dragon, then the city becomes safer, so it's easier for the city holder to survive and do stuff. So it's not direct interaction, but good stuff in one area that gives good stuff in the other game.
It reminds me of
everything can affect it.
Yeah, it reminds me of what inspired me to do the Arms of War trilogy of games, which hopefully will actually come to fruition one day. But there was a game that was created as a companion game for EVE Online, where it was a shooter game, and whenever you were in EVE Online and you were like assaulting a planet, it would spawn a new game in the shooter, and you were actually like in an FPS match over Dominion over that planet, and whoever won the FPS match won the planet in EVE Online, right? So it's really cool, like cause and effect thing that happened that I was trying to replicate in Arms of War, and I think a couple of the mechanics would be super fun to do. But it's within that same kind of vein of like interconnected, because I wanted all of the games to feel like they were in one persistent universe. So like one big thing that happened here would have effects in the other games, you know?
Yeah,
so that was
that's always so awesome when it's done well.
Yeah,
because it makes it feel real.
If it's done at all.
Yeah, that's a real point.
Right.
Pitch the idea, Delta.
Yeah. Good
like
call.
a separated API between them. Like what I just said about the whole trading between all different kinds of games. That's really hard. But if you make an API that says, okay, this game gets a signal if the other game does X amount of things, that would be interesting.
Yeah, we were planning on using Redis as the interface in between and just do pub sub events. Fairly easy, because the data that you're actually passing from back and forth, because if it was custom made for that, like this game knows that this game is going to be sending, you know, certain events over, so you could send very basic rudimentary data, and it wouldn't have to be like a complex data model that you're trying to pass back and forth. Be like, this event happened, like, oh well, I know what that means, and then you just go from there. Another option was a shared database, basic, but like,
yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so
another game idea. Oh, go ahead.
Not to pull back the organic conversation we're having, which is great, but what was the duration that we had for the game jam? Just want to kind of get all these details down.
Delta's always ruining our fun with his work.
I'm sorry. I want to post this on Reddit and start like getting the word out.
I agree. It does make it less painful though.
A weekend or a week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Maybe 2 weeks.
At least a week. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because everyone's got jobs and other stuff going on, you know. I mean, that's kind of the point of the jam too. But
if we're not picking our own teams, and like, there's not many people, so if you're not picking your own teams, you won't be able to know. Like, I know exactly this guy and me can probably get something done in a week. You might want to extend it a little bit.
Okay, good point. Yeah.
Are you actually pointing to the guy next to you, or?
I know that every single one of you can do better than me.
Now, this guy, I'm not worried about. That guy.
It's great. I'm most worried about that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it the same guy? I wonder if we're pointing to the same guy, because
I think it's all different actually for everyone.
Yeah, it probably is. This is the game. Now we all have to decide. This is our social. What do they call those games? The social whatever.
Oh,
everyone points at that guy, and we got to figure out who that guy was.
Guess who? That would be awesome. Cool. All right, awesome. I think we have everything down that we need to start really planning this. I think we're going to start soliciting for donations here in the next week or two. So kind of keep an eye out for that. And then I want to be super transparent about how much is in there and what all that is being used for and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Donations and sponsorships. Don't forget sponsorships.
Sponsorships, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's not a bad idea.
That's why I'm the business guy. So I can't do the programming in the game jam or the art, but I'll suggest sponsorships.
Yeah, not a bad idea actually. We could have games sponsor it, right? Like,
well, that'd be cool, right? Because if you're running one of these games and you want to throw a few bucks in to get a mention, why not? And you'll get some viewers, right? You got people who are playing these games or interested in these games get to see your game.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great idea.
Brought to you by Scary Bee.
You could also, if you want, if someone sponsors it, they can pick a type of game or game mechanic they want to see, and then you just throw it all in a box. You grab a random one, and so they have influence on the game jam.
So for the pitches, we actually establish what those pitches are, and then the sponsors can look and be like, "I'm gonna sponsor that one."
Oh yeah,
that could also work.
Be interesting. Okay. Game.
Well, I may be really good, because if I make a really good pitch, I may get the most sponsors.
What is that? there was like a movie where you'd get sponsored by like Hunger Games, right? They could sponsor you in the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
So the same kind of. I think that might ruin a little bit of the competitive edge there, honestly. But
Yeah, I think sponsoring the whole thing is a good idea, right? Because if you're like, if the community players are coming in and playing, and like you're streaming that or however you plan on doing that, to have it, this is brought to you by Imperial Conflict, right? Like, I mean, what a cool thing, and that supports the whole community. And I really do think, and I think this is true in this community, we're really good about supporting each other. So why not continue to maximize our opportunities to support each other?
Sure. Mutual benefit.
Yeah.
We'll get to see the
Room
buy.
for all of us.
Yeah. Brought to you by Delta's Account 1, Delta's Account 2.
Dibs on the pitch session. I'm sponsoring that. This pitch session is brought to you by Delta's library of failed games.
By Delta Coin.
Delta
Buy
Coin.
now.
Abandonware.
Abandonware.
Banded coin.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. This is great. This is awesome. Okay. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to kind of put it into a better format and then start planning a time frame. Does anyone have any preference on time frame?
At
Probably
least a week.
At least a week. Well, I mean,
At
like
least-
when we're actually going to do it. It's like maybe like August or something. It's a good break. I think.
As long as it's at least a month away, because I actually took this next week off on vacation, so I probably wouldn't want to do another one immediately.
Yeah. Right.
August sounds like a fair, plenty of time for people to get aware of it, adjust their plans, and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
Actually, a point. In August and September, there are some other game jams for other major things. So do look for the dates of those. So make sure to avoid those.
That's good to know.
Okay, that's
Like,
great.
I think there's a visual novel one, and then there's like I forget what it's actually called, but it's like the writers thing in November and October.
Oh, yeah.
Nanarino?
Yeah,
Can you?
I avoid that because I do script.
If anyone knows of any, just let me know. I'll try to look for them, but I probably won't be able to capture everything out there. So if you know of any other game jam that's happening, just let me know.
Well, plus PBG players aren't allowed in normal jams, right? Aren't we banned from that?
Yeah, we get too rowdy at the bar.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, we
incident
get
of
yelled at whenever
2018.
Yeah, when we go on the incremental Reddit and actually be like, "Hey, our PBBG is incremental," and they're like, "No, go away."
No guest login.
That actually happened to me multiple times.
Yeah.
Also, the roguelike community also doesn't like PBBG games.
No, we have such a stellar reputation.
Yeah, I think we need to probably work on that a little bit. It would be cool to. I mean, most incremental games are PBBGs. They just don't have a server backend, right? If you close the browser, one thing that we probably need to do is we need to come up with a communal definition of what a PBBG is, and like decide on that and be like, okay, this is the de facto definition.
Why? The name says it all, right? It has to be persistent and it has to be run in a browser.
True. Yes. So there's a lot of different caveats around that. For example, Legends of Eidolon or Eidolon, it was made for mobile first. It's an app, but they have a browser like version that you can play, and it's like it's the same game. So it kind of depends on does that count as a PBBG, because it is in the browser and is persistent, but it wasn't originally made for the browser. It was kind of ported over to it. So
Is it going to be a
if it was a
requirement?
PBBG?
what?
Or would it be bad if it would count as one?
I don't think it would be bad. No, good point. I would want to try to like bring them under the communal umbrella, though, and I obviously don't think that they would be very kosher with that. But it just kind of there's. Well, I mean that's a good point. I don't know.
I honestly find like For contests like this, I think we mean something different than what the official definition might be. Like, there should be some interaction between players, not just seeing that they exist on the same screen as you, but that your actions can actually be seen as having an effect on their game, if not them directly. But then again, a lot of games today in the PBBG world are like, you interact via the market, but everything else is pretty much single player unless you're in a corporation or a guild together. And I think that's
I've played a lot of incremental and idle games, and like maybe one or two had any multiplayer features, so it's a clear line.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I think that a lot of those idle and incremental games should be PBBGs, because if you log off and you close the browser window and then you open it up again later and your state is saved on it, either via login or session or whatever, it's a persistent browser-based game. So I think a lot of that should count. It kind of redefines the line, moves the line over. I mean, we could be persistent multiplayer browser-based games, PBBG.
Sure, yeah. Else, if you have a idle game with just cloud save features, then it's persistent.
Yes, right.
But is it a persistent browser-based game?
Or at the end of the day, we can just make cool games and play them.
I mean, yeah right. I've seen the question come up every now and again, probably every 3 or 4 months. It comes up either in Reddit or in Discord or somewhere in the community where it's like, well, what is a PBBG? And I would like to just kind of have a formal definition. We can revisit it whenever we want to, but I think that having that as not to be too on point, but as a persistent idea of what we define a PBBG of today would be a good thing to have.
Is a Unity game in the browser, is that a browser-based game? That was a question asked a few days ago in chat.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Guilty as charged.
Was that you?
I was involved in that conversation and I also was asking, because I was wondering also about Unity. A lot of people here, I don't know anyone who uses Unity. I'm like, is there a reason that PBBGs aren't using Unity in general? Is it because it's too heavy? So I was just kind of curious about that. So that kind of started that conversation.
Right. And so maybe we don't consider it a PBBG if it uses Unity, but if 40% of all the games being created are in Unity, do we now consider them PBBGs? Right.
But I think the other elements are there, right? I mean, because if you're passing a test, you have to meet all conditions, right? And have to is relative, right? Because there's always going to be edge cases, and it doesn't really matter at the end. But are you persistent? Are you browser based? Right? I mean, if those are the, so I don't know.
So Unity is
a difficult question.
Yeah.
Right. Unity is not browser based.
Unity is not.
So even if you port it.
Right.
But if you made it specifically for the browser, you just made it in Unity, would that count?
So maybe it's just maybe it's does this play like the PBBG?
Yeah.
So I'll make this argument.
If you make it in Pixie.js, then it's a browser-based game. But what's the difference with Unity?
Right.
It's probably a lot more complex, but
right. But if you make it in Unity and you port it to the web and it's played on the web, right, and you don't download something to your machine or whatever, this is where I get confused, and I don't really care. I don't, I like throwing bombs in religious wars, but I don't really care about the outcome. But it gets down to that, as far as I'm concerned, if someone came into the community, and I'm not in charge of the community, but if someone came in the community and said, I want to be part of your group and I build games in Unity and put them on, who cares, right? You don't do what we do exactly, so you can't be here. I mean, you let the community self-select as long as they're not damaging the community, who cares?
Yeah, I'll also merit this. There is actually an Unreal.js in which you can actually export earlier versions of Unreal 4 to be played in the browser.
Really?
Ooh, that's a thin line.
Atwood's Law,
Yeah.
man.
And that was one of the considerations we were having for the game I'm working on, Delta. Obviously not with, that wouldn't be the front end that you'd be assisting with, but like
Right.
a 2.0 way further down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of other libraries, but there's other technologies that are getting better and more powerful. So two of them that instantly come to mind are WebGL. And there are a couple of frameworks actively taking advantage of WebGL to bundle that into something a lot better because it's a bit raw. And then there's also WebAssembly, where you can do full executables. There's a company doing WebAssembly that is able to port your entire... it basically runs Node.js in your browser using WebAssembly. So JavaScript went from the browser to the machine and back to the browser again. It's just making this weird circle. But with WebAssembly, you could do stuff like Unity could be run on WebAssembly without any translation. So, if that's the case, maybe that Unity plus WebAssembly is a PBBG versus not.
So I would probably, my clarification of it would probably be, it's still a PBBG as long as you don't need to download any external software to get it to run on the more up-to-date versions of Chrome or whatever browsers we use.
Okay,
Like,
non-downloadable. That's good.
Right.
Obviously
it's played in a
non-downloadable.
browser. Right. No assets loaded on the computer. It's played in the browser. Right.
Yeah. And that, maybe
No
Java
assets
software
downloaded?
development kit. Yeah.
No pictures, no JavaScript files, nothing. One page.
Yeah. Well, you tech guys can argue about where I'm wrong on that because you downloaded a cookie or something. But if I have to download a 10 megabyte application to run the game, it's not a browser-based game, right?
Yeah. It shouldn't be running third-party software on your computer just to run something inside your browser.
Okay, non-downloadable third-party software. I think that's good. Third-party software makes sense.
So standard
And
Chrome plugin.
multiplayer interaction.
What was that?
Yeah.
Multiplayer interaction. Did you already write that down?
If it's single player, but it has a server, it has a database and a login, but there's no multiplayer interaction. Does it have to be multiplayer?
Should we at least add a guideline that it should reference the progress of other players at the very minimum? Especially if it's going to be an economic game, you have to make it so it references the actions other players have made.
Oh, I mean this is an overall definition of what a PBBG is, separate from the game.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Entirely. I think we moved on and it didn't make that very clear. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a damn persistent part. It's quite vague.
Right. Yeah. What does persistent mean? Does persistent mean if I jump on as a solo player and I do my thing and that every time I come back, my progress is saved, but it never impacts anyone else in the game? That's persistent still to me.
Yeah. Well, maybe it has to be like a persistent world, right? So it has to run when the game has to continue when you close the browser.
But you fake that with coding, right? You get back on and you log in and it does all the calculations when you're gone. So I think that's splitting hairs. I do think an interesting point is, because I've always considered it, and I don't think I'd ever heard of this category for a few years ago, even though I played persistent browser-based games, is, is there a requirement that there be other players or a world that you're impacting for other players? And I wouldn't think so. A persistent game is a persistent game,
Actually, one other way to look at it is the world runs without the players. The world is persistent, you're just in it. So
what if the world is just calculated when you log back on again?
Well, if it goes to calculating how long was the last tick that you were on, and then calculates resource gathering for offline calculations.
Yeah.
The rest of the players that still remain online, they don't go through that. It's just that theirs is live. So the persistence is the fact that it's always running even when you're offline. So I guess that would be the criteria there.
Right, but technically you get in a problem with a thinly, occupied site is like everyone was off at the same time, so technically the world isn't running, so it's no longer persistent, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, is your progress tracked in the browser? Is your events in the world tracked some way?
It may be less efficient, but you can still have ticks running. It's just that no one's actually having their value.
But why do that if there's not a mission intent, right? If there's not a requirement to do that, I'm gonna have this run just so it's a browser-based game. That's a waste of resources.
And not only that,
I actually have an interesting idea for that. If you make a game that doesn't save any state, but only maintains a blockchain, like that's basically a list of everything that happened in the game, and all the actions are being shared with all the players who play it, then if everyone logs out, then the persistence is gone. So that's quite an interesting.
Oh, jeez. The world dies if no one cares.
So it's like a roguelike multiplayer game. If everybody logs out, the world ends.
That's right. Yeah. You got to start over from the beginning.
Really fun. That would be really fun.
That is an interesting idea. Yeah. You talk about encouraging your buddies to play. Like, you guys have to play. We're about to die.
Yeah. Everyone has to log on.
At least one person has to be online to be like the only one with the complete save game.
That's cool.
The tension in that game could also be that if you die, you can't log back in for a certain amount of time.
Oh, yeah. Because you're like the last couple standing. It's like you guys need to stay alive no matter what, because if you die, we're starting over.
I can see that being
horde mode again.
That's interesting.
That is a really interesting idea. I think we have a game jam idea here going.
I'm going to write this down. This is going to be my idea.
I think everyone here has played like Left 4 Dead.
Right. Right.
You can imagine a game like that where you're like the last person alive and you're waiting for someone else to res. Like, oh my god.
It could be like a Highlander situation, though. Like, I will be the last person with the game. I'm the only one.
Oh, this is actually quite interesting, because I was thinking about something like a zombie survival game, where if you die, you become a zombie. And if all the players die and the zombies win, then the game restarts. It could fit together.
I like that. Yeah. I think that would be pretty fun. As a long-term PBBG, that would be so much fun, because the players who are left after a long period of time, they sunk in months of work to stay alive, and so like the need to not get turned into a zombie is a lot greater than you would have in other games. That would be that's you should write that one down too.
Yeah.
So would the ability to register and log in for the first time be turned off after the first week or something?
Oh, good call. Yeah, you can make alt accounts, and that would really screw it up.
You could just have to start different instances, right? Like there's a cutoff, and then a new instance starts. So you collect up enough players, then start a second instance, and then collect enough players to start a third instance.
There was someone with a similar idea around that, and I'm not sure they'd be comfortable with me sharing it, but it was in that realm, and it was really, really interesting. But yeah, so there are people thinking of that, by the way.
I think we've got our idea for the next game jam.
Yeah. All right, and we're pretty much at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream, and but everyone can feel free to stay on and stuff like that. Everyone say bye to YouTube. Bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, guys. It was great. We'll see.